I just gotten home from my shift at the hospital exhausted and dreaming of a hot shower in my comfortable bed when I found three large men in expensive suits standing outside my apartment door. They were holding moving boxes and looking at their phones like they were confirming an address. "Excuse me," I said, keys in hand, trying to figure out why these intimidating strangers were blocking my door. "Can I help you?" The tallest one, built like a tank, with a scar across his cheek, looked at me with cool assessment. "You live here, apartment 4B, yes, and you're blocking my door, so if you could move, we're moving someone in. Tenant has a lease starting today." He let out his phone, showed me a document that did indeed show apartment 4B lease beginning today's date. "That's impossible. I have a lease. This is my apartment. There must be a mistake." "No mistake. We've verified the address 3 times." He gestured to the door. "You're going to need to let us in so we can start moving boxes. I'm not letting strange men into my apartment based on a document on a phone. I need to call my landlord and figure out what's happening." Before I could pull out my phone, another man appeared at the top of the stairs. Unlike the others, he wasn't carrying boxes. He was just there and impossible to ignore. He was probably early 30s, tall and powerfully built, with dark hair and sharp features that were striking in an almost unsettling way. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, and he moved with the kind of confidence that suggested he was used to getting exactly what he wanted. "Problem?" he asked, his voice deep and carrying a slight accent. "I couldn't place this woman. Says she lives here." Scarface explained. "Claims there's been a mistake." The man in the expensive suit turned his attention to me, dark eyes assessing. "You're Elena Russo." "Elena Castillo, not Russo. And yes, I live here, have lived here for 2 years. So whoever you are, you have the wrong apartment. I'm Dante Romano, and I have a lease for apartment 4B signed by the building's owner starting today. If you also have a lease, then someone made an error. But that's not my problem. It's yours and the landlord's to sort out. You can't just move into an occupied apartment because you have a piece of paper actually legally. I can. The lease is valid. You'll need to take up the double booking with your landlord." He nodded to his men. "Start moving boxes, and we're on a schedule." "No, you're not moving anything into my apartment." I positioned myself in front of the door, which was admittedly stupid given that these men could easily move me aside, but I was exhausted, angry, and not thinking clearly. Dante studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "Luca, call the landlord. Get them on speakerphone. We'll sort this out now rather than waste time arguing." While one of his men made the call, I took the opportunity to really look at Dante Romano. He was attractive in a dangerous way, the kind of man who probably had women falling at his feet, but also probably had a dozen reasons you should run in the opposite direction. The expensive suit, the armed guards, the casual assumption that he could just move into an occupied apartment. Everything screamed money and power. "In trouble, Mr. Kim? It's Luca calling on Bay Alf of Mr. Romano regarding apartment 4B." The scarred man said into his phone. "There's a tenant here claiming the apartment is hers." "Yes, I'll put you on speaker." My landlord's voice came through, tiny but clear. "Elena, is that you, Mr. Kim? What's going on? Why are there men trying to move into my apartment?" "Oh, Elena, I tried to call you earlier, but it went to voicemail. There's been a situation. The building has been sold. New owner wanted to make some changes, including restructuring some of the leases. Your apartment was unfortunately double booked. I understand you're upset. We can discuss this later. For now, your new keys are on the kitchen counter in 4CH." Hung up, I turned to Dante Romano, who'd been watching this entire exchange with an expression that was either amusement or pity. I couldn't tell which. "Congratulations, you got my apartment. I hope you're happy." "I didn't get your apartment. I signed a lease for an available unit. If your landlord mishandled the situation, that's between you and him. I'm just moving into the apartment I legally rented with armed guards and moving teams like you're some kind of." I stopped, really looking at the men surrounding him, professional, alert, constantly scanning the surroundings. "Who are you? What kind of person needs security like this just to move into an apartment own who values safety and privacy?" "Now, if you'll excuse me, we have moving to do. I'm sure you want to check out your new apartment and make sure your belongings are intact." He was dismissing me like I was an inconvenience he'd already dealt with and could now ignore. The arrogance made my anger flare even hotter. "4C is a studio. It's half the size of this apartment. If my things don't fit, if anything is damaged because your lease forced me into a smaller space, then you'll take it up with the landlord, who's responsible for the move, not with me. I'm simply the new tenant of 4B. He nodded to his men. "Let's get started. I want to be settled by tonight." They moved past me like I wasn't even there, carrying boxes into what used to be my apartment. I stood in the hallway feeling violated, and helpless watching strangers invade my space. The apartment next door had its door propped open. I walked in to find my furniture crammed into a space that was clearly too small. My bed took up most of the main room. My couch was pushed against one wall, my desk against another, barely leaving walking space. Boxes were stacked everywhere. Drug dealer, my coworker Jessica suggested during our lunch break. I told her about the apartment situation, though I'd left out the part about Dante being disturbingly attractive. Rich guy security guards, irregular hours, that screams illegal activity, or he's just a businessman who travels a lot with armed guards. Girl, that's not normal businessman behavior. You should be careful, maybe get a better lock on your door. She had a point. There was definitely something unusual about Dante Romano, but I had bigger problems than figuring out my mysterious neighbor's profession, like the fact that my student loans were due, my car needed repairs I couldn't afford, and I just gotten a notice that my health insurance premiums were going up 2 weeks after Dante moved in. I came home at 11 p.m. after a brutally long shift to find my key wouldn't work in the lock. I tried 3 times before accepting that something was wrong. Exhausted and on the verge of tears, I knocked on 4B. After a minute, Dante answered, looking like he'd been working. Dress shirt partially unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messed up in a way that should have looked disheveled, but instead looked unfairly attractive. Elena, everything okay? My key won't work. I think the lock is broken or something. Do you have Mr. Kim's emergency number? I can't find it in my phone. It's almost midnight. Calling now probably won't get you anywhere. Maintenance won't come until morning. He stepped back from his door. You're welcome to wait in here until you figure something out. I was working anyway, so I'm awake. I should have said no, should have gone back downstairs and called Mr. Kim anyway, or found a hotel, or literally anything other than accepting help from the man who'd taken my apartment. But I was exhausted, my feet hurt, and the thought of dealing with this crisis right now was overwhelming. Thank you, I appreciate it. The apartment, my former apartment, looked completely different. He'd furnished it with expensive minimalist furniture. Large windows I'd never properly appreciated now showcased a stunning view of the city at night. Everything was clean, organized, clearly decorated by S. Own with both money and taste. You've done a lot with the place, I said, trying not to feel bitter about how much better it looked than when I'd lived here. I like having a comfortable home base when I'm in the city. Coffee, you look like you could use it, please. It's been a horrible shift. 3 traumas, 2 codes, and a patient's family member who threatened to see me personally because we couldn't save their father, who came in already deceased. Dante made coffee in an expensive espresso machine that definitely hadn't been in this apartment when I lived here. Sounds rough. How long have you been a nurse? 4 years. Sometimes it feels like 4 decades. I accepted the coffee gratefully. What do you do for work? I mean, Jessica thinks you're a drug dealer because of the security and irregular hours. He smiled slightly, something that transformed his usually serious face. Not a drug dealer. I run operations for my family's business, import-export, primarily based in Italy, but with significant work in New York. That's vague enough to be suspicious. It's vague because the details are boring. Shipping manifests, customs, paperwork, supply chain, logistics. Not exactly cocktail party conversation, but interesting enough to need armed security. My family is wealthy and well known in certain circles. Security is a precaution, not a necessity, but after a kidnapping attempt on my cousin 3 years ago, we don't take chances. That sounded plausible. Rich families did have security for legitimate reasons. Maybe Jessica was wrong and Dante was just a businessman with reasonable precautions. We talked for the next hour about work, about the city, about the building and its quirks. He was surprisingly easy to talk to with a dry sense of humor that made me laugh despite my exhaustion. And when I checked my phone and realized it was past 1 a.m., I was surprised by how quickly the time had passed. I should try my door again. Maybe the lock was just stuck, or I could call a locksmith now, have them come out first thing in the morning, get you a working lock by 8 a.m. That would be expensive. Emergency locksmith calls are ridiculous. Consider it a neighborly favor, compensation for taking your apartment. If you want to think of it that way, you didn't take my apartment, you rented an available unit. I'm angry at the wrong person. I repeated his words from our first meeting. But if you're offering to pay for a locksmith, I won't say no. It's been a really bad week. He made a call in Italian, speaking rapidly to whoever was on the other end. After hanging up, he turned back to me. Locksmith will be here at 7 a.m. In the meantime, you can stay in the guest room if you want to sleep, or take the couch if you prefer to be in the common area. Your choice. Dante, I can't. That's too much. It's a guest room that's sitting empty. You're exhausted from a 12-hour shift and dealing with a lock crisis. Just accept the help. Elena, not everything has to be a fight. He was right, I was too tired to fight or to figure out alternatives. Okay. Thank you, I'll take the couch though the guest room feels like too much suit. Yourself blankets and pillows are in the hall closet. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen if you get hungry. He started toward what I assumed was his bedroom, then paused. And Elena, I really am sorry about the apartment situation. I know I was just renting an available unit. Doesn't make it less frustrating for you. But for what it's worth, you're handling it better than most people would. After he disappeared into his room, I settled onto his couch, which was more comfortable than my actual bed, and tried to process what had happened tonight. I'd gotten locked out of my apartment, accepted help from my mysterious neighbor who'd displaced me, and somehow ended up having one of the most pleasant conversations I'd had in months with someone who might or might not be involved in illegal activities. I was clearly losing my mind. The locksmith arrived exactly at 7 a.m. and had my lock working again. Within 30 minutes, Dante appeared as I was getting ready to leave for my shift, wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt that should have looked casual, but instead made him look like he belonged in some kind of upscale men's fashion spread. Good morning, sleep okay, considering I was displaced, homeless, and sleeping on a stranger's couch. Surprisingly, well, thank you again for last night, and for the locksmith, it was really kind of you. Neighborly, he corrected. With a slight smile, neighbors help each other out, right? That's how this works, right? How what works, living next to each other, sharing walls occasionally. Needing favors, I wouldn't know. I've never really done the neighbor thing before. Traveled too much for work to build relationships with people next door. Until now, I smiled and headed for the door, feeling oddly happy despite having exactly zero sleep and a potentially complicated living situation involving an attractive, mysterious neighbor who was either a businessman or a criminal. Over the next few weeks, Dante and I fell into an odd routine. We'd run into each other in the hallway, share polite conversation about our days. I'd hear him moving around next door, working late, taking calls in Italian that sounded either very important or very angry. Sometimes both. He'd leave for days at a time for business travel, and I'd find myself listening for his return more than I cared to admit. The building's walls were thin enough that I could hear his movements, his late-night phone calls, the sound of his shower in the morning. It should have been annoying. Instead, I found it comforting to know someone was nearby in a city that could feel overwhelmingly isolating, especially during long hospital shifts that left me drained and emotionally exhausted. One evening, about a month after the lock incident, I came home to find a box outside my door, takeout from an expensive Italian restaurant with a note. Locked myself out and ordered too much food. Figured you might be hungry after your shift. If not, tomorrow's lunch problem solved. Dante, the food was incredible, real Italian, not the Americanized version I was used to, and I realized I was starving, having forgotten to eat during a particularly chaotic day at the hospital. I knocked on his door around 9, holding the empty containers and a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. Thank you for dinner. It was amazing and exactly what I needed. Glad you enjoyed it. I had a meeting run long, couldn't get back in time. Figured it shouldn't go to waste. He accepted the wine with a raised eyebrow. Wine, excellent choice. Want to share it? I should probably get some sleep. Early shift tomorrow. But you know what? I've had exactly zero social interaction today that wasn't work-related, and you just fed me. So yes, I'd like to share wine with my neighbor. We ended up on his couch again, but this time it felt different, less crisis-driven, more intentional, like two people choosing to spend time together rather than circumstances forcing proximity. He opened the wine, poured 2 glasses, and we settled into easy conversation about everything and nothing, work, family, the city life in general. I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't in months, maybe years. So meeting about Dante's presence was calming, grounding, despite the mystery surrounding his actual profession. Can I ask you something? I said after my second glass of wine. Sure. Why did you really offer this arrangement? And don't say it's about security or guilt. There's more to it. He was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. I've lived alone for a long time, moved around a lot for work, never stayed anywhere long enough to build real connections. This apartment, this city, I decided I wanted to actually settle somewhere, build something more than just a temporary home base. And having you here, having someone to share space with, to talk to, it makes his place feel less empty, less like just another stop on the endless work circuit. So are you an antidote to loneliness? You're my friend, at least I hope you are. Or you will be if you can get past the whole apartment situation. I'm past it mostly. Current arrangement is definitely an upgrade from the studio. I smiled. And yes, we're friends, though Jessica is convinced there's more to it. What does Jessica think is going on? That we're living in a romance novel setup and should just admit we're attracted to each other and start making out the words came out more boldly than I'd intended, probably helped by the wine. Dante's expression shifted, surprised and something that looked like heat before he controlled it. And what do you think? I think Jessica watches too many romantic comedies where roommates friends. That's all right. That's all. He stood collecting our plates. I have some work to finish. Thanks for dinner. Conversation. He disappeared into his office, leaving me wondering if I just screwed up whatever comfortable dynamic we built, because the truth was Jessica wasn't entirely wrong. I was attracted to Dante, had been since the first time I saw him, if I was being honest, but acting on that attraction would complicate everything: our living situation, our friendship, the careful balance we'd established. Better to keep things simple, professional, friendly, but boundaried, except boundaries became harder to maintain when 2 weeks later I came home from a particularly brutal shift to find Dante pacing the living room, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian that sounded angry. He hung up. When he saw me, his expression darker than I'd ever seen it. Everything okay? Family business, nothing you need to worry about. But his tone suggested he was very much worried. Dante, you're clearly upset. If you want to talk about it, I don't, but thank you. He grabbed his keys. I need to go out. Don't wait up. He left, and I tried not to feel hurt by the abrupt dismay. Saw we were roommates, not partners. He didn't owe me explanations about his personal life. But when he still wasn't home at 2 a.m., I started worrying. And when he finally walked in at 3 a.m., I was awake on the couch, unable to sleep from concern. You waited up, he said, sounding surprised. I was worried you left upset. And then you were gone for hours, and I didn't know if something happened. I stopped when I saw his hands, bruised knuckles, dried blood on one sleeve. Dante, what happened? Are you hurt? I'm fine, just a business situation that got physical. It's handled. You're bleeding. That's not fine. Let me look at your hands. Elena, I'm a nurse, literally trained. Ed, for this, sit down and let me check if you need stitches or if anything's broken. He sat, and I examined his hands carefully. The knuckles were bruised and split, but not seriously damaged. No broken bones, nothing requiring stitches. I cleaned the wounds with antiseptic, applied bandages, working with professional efficiency, while my mind raced with questions. What kind of business meeting ends with you bloodied and bruised? I asked as I wrapped his right hand, the kind I don't want you involved in. Elena, my work, it's not always clean, not always legal. And the less you know about it, the safer you are. You in danger? Should I be worried about people coming here? You're safe. This apartment, this building, completely separate from business. I keep my personal life and work life completely separate. That's non-negotiable. But you're not safe. Whatever you were doing tonight put you in a situation where you got hurt. Dante, that's not normal business operations. That's my world, and it's not something you need to worry about. I appreciate your concern, but I can handle my own problems. He stood, clearly ending the conversation. Thank you for patching me up. I'm going to shower and sleep. You should too. After he left, I sat on the couch processing what had happened: the blood, the bruises, the angry phone call, the admiss. Shown that his work wasn't always legal. It all pointed to something I'd been trying not to see. Dante wasn't just a businessman with security. He was involved in something dangerous, possibly criminal. I should have been terrified, should have started looking for a new apartment immediately. But instead, I just felt worried about him, about whatever situation had put him in danger, about whether he'd be safe the next time business got physical. The next morning, Dante was gone. Before I woke up, he left a note: thank you for last night. I'm sorry I worried you. Taking care of some business for a few days. We'll be back by Friday. In 3 days, he'd be gone for Tichari. Days taking care of business that had already gotten him hurt. I tried not to think about what might happen during those 3 days. Jessica and noticed my distraction during our shift. You're worried about him, your mysterious roommate. He came home, he hurt, bruised hands, blood on his clothes, said it was a business situation that got physical. Jessica, what if he's in actual danger? Then maybe it's time to have a serious conversation about what exactly his business involves, because girl, if you're catching feelings for someone in a dangerous situation, you need to know what you're getting into. She was right, but having that conversation required Dante to act. Yuli, tell me the truth, which seemed unlikely given how carefully he avoided discussing his work. When Dante returned on Friday, he looked exhausted, but unharmed. I was in the kitchen making dinner when he walked in, dropping his bag by the door. Hey, you're okay? I'm okay. Situation is resolved. How was your week? Busy. Covered 2 extra shifts. Made enough dinner for both of us. If you're hungry, starving, give me 10 minutes to shower, and I'll join you. Over dinner, we fell back into our usual easy conversation, talking about everything except the elephant in the room: his work, his injuries, whatever dangerous situation he'd spent 3 days resolving. He clearly didn't want to discuss it, and I didn't want to push and ruin the comfortable dynamic we'd reestablished. But later that night, after a few glasses of wine, Dante finally brought it up. I know you have questions about what I do about the other night, about why I come home bloody. Sometimes you deserve answers, especially since you're living here. Only if you want to tell me. I'm not going to demand information you're not comfortable sharing. My family is involved in organized crime, have been for generations. Import-export is real. We run legitimate shipping operations, but we also handle other things: territory disputes, enforcement protection services. I'm SE. Condominium in command under my uncle, being groomed to eventually take over operations. The admission hung in the air. My roommate, the man I'd been living with, sharing meals with, developing feelings for, was in the mafia. So when you said business got physical, I mean exactly that. Someone challenged our territory. I had to remind them why that was a mistake. It's ugly, it's violent, and it's part of my world. His dark eyes held mine. I understand if this changes things. If you want to move out, find a different situation, I'll help you relocate. Make sure you're set up somewhere safe and comfortable. No hard feelings. You're giving me an out. I'm giving you a choice. Stay and accept what I am, or leave and protect yourself from my world. Either way, I'll respect your decision. I should have chosen to leave, should have packed my things and found a new apartment far from Dante Romano and his dangerous life. But I thought about the past 2 months, the easy companionship, the comfortable domesticity, the way he made me laugh and feel less alone in a city that could be isolating, and I thought about how, despite his criminal activities, he'd been nothing but kind and respectful to me. I'm staying, I heard myself say, but I need honesty, Dante. No more hiding when you're hurt or in danger. If we're doing this living together, being friends, whatever this is, I need to know when things are bad. Can you give me that? I can try, though sometimes not knowing is safer. Let me decide what level of risk I'm comfortable with. Deal. He reached across the table, took my hand. Thank you for not running, for giving me a chance despite what I am. Thank you for being honest. Finally, we sat there, hands linked across the table, and I knew that whatever this was between us, it had just become infinitely more complicated after Dante's confession. Our dynamic shifted, not dramatically. We still shared meals, still talked for hours, still existed in comfortable domesticity, but now there was an undercurrent of awareness, of acknowledgement that we were both attracted to each other and carefully not acting on it. You're playing a dangerous game, Jessica warned during one of our lunch breaks. Living with a hot mafia guy, you're clearly into pretending you're just roommates. That's a romance novel waiting to happen. We're actually just roommates. Nothing's happened yet. But girl, the tension you're describing, that's not sustainable. Something's going to break. She was right, though I didn't want to admit it. The awareness between Dante and me was becoming harder to ignore. The way his hand would brush mine when we were cooking together, how he'd look at me sometimes, dark eyes intense with something that made my breath catch. The nights we'd end up on the couch watching movies, sitting progressively closer as the evening went on. 2 weeks after his confession, Dante had to leave town for business again. This time, he warned me in advance. I'll be gone for about a week. Business in Chicago that requires personal attention. Luca will be checking in on the apartment while I'm gone. He's my head of security, the one you met when I moved in. If you need anything, call him. I can take care of myself. I've been living alone for years, I know, but humor me. You're under my protection now, whether you realize it or not. That means Luca checks and makes sure you're safe. It's not negotiable. Under your protection. Is that a mafia thing? It's a me thing. You matter to me, Elena. Your safety matters. So Luca checks in. Understood. Be careful in Chicago. Always am. He left early the next morning. I tried not to think about what business in Chicago entailed, whether he'd come back hurt again, whether this was a dangerous trip or routine operations. He'd promised honesty, but there were still things he didn't share, details he thought would worry me unnecessarily. Luca did indeed check in daily, always professional, but clearly taking his job seriously. By day 3, I'd gotten used to his 10 o'clock 0 a.m. calls asking if everything was okay, if I needed anything, if there had been any unusual activity around the apartment. On day 5, everything changed. I came home from my shift to find the apartment door slightly ajar. I knew I'd locked it that morning. I always locked it, especially when Dante was out of town. Heart pounding, I pulled out my phone to call Luca, but before I could dial, someone grabbed me from behind, a hand clamped over my mouth, an arm around my waist, pulling me into the apartment. I fought, using every self-defense move I'd ever learned, but my attacker was strong, male, significantly larger than me, clearly experienced in subduing Poppy. Stop fighting, a voice said in my ear, accent heavy. We're not here to hurt. You just need you to cooperate. There were 2 of them in the apartment, the one holding me and another searching through Dante's office. They were looking for something, clearly professionals moving with practice. Deficiency. "Where is he, the one holding me?" asked Romano. "Where did he go?" "I don't know. He doesn't tell me his schedule." "You're lying. You live together. You're close. He tells you things. Now tell us where he is before." This gets unpleasant. "I really don't know. Chicago. Maybe he said he had business there, but he didn't give specifics." The man searching the office called out something in a language I didn't recognize. They had a brief exchange. Then the one holding me dragged me toward Dante's office. "Open his safe now." "I don't know the combination. He never told me." "Figure it out, or we start breaking things, starting with your fingers." He wasn't bluffing. I could hear it in his voice. Cold, professional, someone who'd hurt people before and wouldn't hesitate to do it again. My hands were shaking as I approached the safe, trying to think of what combination Dante might use. His birthday, no, too obvious. Some important date in his family history. I had no idea what that would be. Random numbers. I'd never figure it out. I really don't. "Tino, the combination," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "I'm just his roommate. He doesn't share security information with me." "Roommate?" The man laughed. "Romano doesn't do roommates. You're something to him. Girlfriend, lover, whatever, which means you know things. So start talking or start bleeding." Before he could follow through on the threat, I heard the front door crash open, Luca's voice shouting in Italian, followed by gunfire. The man holding me shoved me toward the safe, drew his own weapon, and returned fire. I dropped to the floor, covering my head, trying to make myself as small as possible. More shouting, more gunfire, chaos erupting around me. Then sud. In silence, Elena, Luca's voice. "Where are you?" "Office." "I'm okay." He appeared in the doorway, gun still drawn, 2 other men with him. "You hurt?" "No, scared, but not hurt." "They wanted me to open Dante's safe, wanted to know where he was." "Did you tell them anything?" "Just that he was in Chicago. That's all I knew." Luca made several phone calls in rapid Italian, then turned his attention back to me. "Pack a bag. You're coming with us. This apartment isn't safe anymore. They found it, which means others can too." "Where are we going?" "Safe house until we figure out who sent them and neutralize the threat. Move quickly. We need to be gone in 5 minutes." I threw essentials into a bag with shaking hands, trying not to think about what had almost happened. The men who'd broken in were gone. Luca's team had removed them, though I wasn't sure if they were dead or just unconscious. And I wasn't going to ask. The safe house was a nondescript apartment in Queens, furnished with the kind of generic furniture you'd find in a corporate housing unit. No personality, no warmth, just functional space designed to be temporary and forgettable. Luca positioned 2 men outside, 1 inside with us, and made it clear I wasn't leaving until Dante returned. I called in sick to the hospital, explaining I had a family emergency, which technically wasn't a lie. If you considered being held in protective custody because of your mafia roommate's enemies a family issue. Dante arrived 18 hours later, his expression murderous, when he walked through the door and saw me sitting on the couch, looking probably as shell-shocked as I felt. "Elena, are you hurt? Are you okay?" "Did they didn't hurt me." "Luca got there before anything really bad happened." "But Dante, they were professionals. They knew about the apartment. About us. They called me your girlfriend. They know you care about me, which makes me a target, doesn't it?" He sat beside me, pulled me into his arms, and for the first time since the break-in, I felt safe. "You are right. This changes everything. I can't keep you separate from my world anymore, not when they're willing to use you to get to me. Elena, I need you to understand something. This is only going to get more dangerous, not less. People know about you now, know you matter to me. That puts a target on your back permanently." "So what does that mean?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "It means I give you a choice again, a real choice this time. You can leave New York entirely. I'll set you up somewhere else. New identity, new life, completely safe from all of this. Or you stay and become part of my world, officially under family protection, with all the dangers and complications that entails, but also with me if you want that last part. Or I stay and we figure out how to make this work together, because running away feels like letting them win, and I'm not ready to let them win." "Dante, you realize what you're offering me? A life in organized crime as the girlfriend of a mafia boss." "Elena, I'm offering you a life with me. Everything else is just context, dangerous, complicated context, but the important part is us. The choice is yours, but you need to understand, if you choose to stay, if you choose this life with me, there's no going back. You'll always be connected to my world, always be a target, always have to live with the knowledge of what I do, and sometimes have to see me come home bloody or hurt or worse. Can you handle that?" I looked at this man who'd started as a stranger, who'd taken my apartment, who'd become my friend, my protector, someone I cared about more than I wanted to admit, and I realized the choice wasn't really a choice at all. I was already in love with him, had been for weeks, maybe longer, and the idea of running away, of starting over somewhere else without him, was more terrifying than staying and Facing whatever dangers came with his world, I'm staying, I said, and immediately felt the rightness of the decision in my bones, not just staying in new. York, staying with you, whatever that means, whatever comes with it. Dante, you once told me, I matter to you. Well, you matter to me too, enough to take the risk. The admission seemed to break something loose in him, the careful control he'd been maintaining since he walked in the door. Elena, are you sure? Because once we cross this line, once you're officially part of my life, part of my world, I can never let you go. I can never risk losing you. Are you ready for that level of intensity, that level of possessiveness? I'm ready. The kiss was inevitable, had been building for months of careful boundaries and unspoken attraction. When his lips met mine, it felt like coming home, like every choice that had led me to this moment had been preparing me for this, for him. The safe house, the gunfire, the fear, all of it became background noise to the certainty that this was where I belonged. 3 months later, we'd settled into a new normal, which was really just the old normal, but with significantly better security and acknowledgement that we were together, officially together, in every way that mattered. Dante had renovated both apartments, turning them into one larger space. The result was essentially a large 2-bedroom apartment. I had my old bedroom back, plus the bathroom, and half the living space. Dante had his bedroom, office, and the other half of the living area. We shared the main kitchen, his, which was much nicer than mine had been, and had an informal agreement about common spaces. This is incredible, Jessica said when she visited and saw the new setup. You went from a cramped studio to basically living in a luxury apartment, and your hot neighbor is paying for everything. Elena, this is like a romance novel setup. It's a practical arrangement between neighbors. That's all. And the way he looks at you, that's also just practical. He doesn't look at me any particular way. We barely see each other. He's gone most days. I work crazy hours. We're like ships passing in the night. But that wasn't entirely true. We did see each other more than I'd expected. Mornings when we were both getting coffee at the same time, evenings when I'd come home from a shift and he'd be cooking dinner, always offering to share late nights when we both be up, me studying for certification exams, him working on his laptop, and we'd end up talking for hours. We fell into an easy rhythm. He'd cook elaborate meals and leave me leftovers. When he knew I was working late shifts, I'd pick up groceries for both of us. When I was shopping, we'd watch movies together, sometimes sharing the couch in comfortable silence. It felt domestic in a way that should have been weird given that we'd known each other less than 2 months, but instead felt natural. You're home early, I commented one evening, finding Dante in the kitchen at 6 p.m. instead of his usual 9 or 10 p.m. return time. Thought I'd actually cooked dinner at a reasonable hour. He was making something that smelled amazing, pasta with fresh tomatoes and basil. Join me. I made enough for 2. You always make enough for 2 because you're always hungry after your shifts, and I like cooking. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. He plated the pasta, poured 2 glasses of wine, and we sat at the kitchen island together. This had become our routine on in. It's when we were both home, dinner together, easy conversation, the kind of companionship that felt effortless. I'd started looking forward to these evenings more than I wanted to admit. Can I ask you something? I said, twirling pasta on my fork. Of course. Why did you really offer this arrangement? And don't say it's about security or guilt. There's more to it. He was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. I've lived alone for a long time, moved around a lot for work, never stayed anywhere long enough to build real connections. This apartment, this city, I decided I wanted to actually settle somewhere, build something more than just a temporary home base. And having you here, having someone to share space with, to talk to, it makes this place feel less empty, less like just another stop on the endless work circuit. So are you an antidote to loneliness? You're my friend, at least I hope you are. Or you will be if you can get past the whole apartment situation. I'm past it mostly. Current arrangement is definitely an upgrade from the studio. I smiled. And yes, we're friends, though. Jessica is convinced there's more to it. What does Jessica think is going on? That we're living in a romance novel setup and should just admit we're attracted to each other and start making out. The words came out more boldly than I intended, probably helped by the wine. Dante's expression shifted, surprise, then something that looked like heat before he controlled it. And what do you think? I think Jessica watches too many romantic comedies. We're roommates, friends, that's all right. That's all. He stood, collecting our plates. I have some work to finish. Thanks for dinner. Conversation. He disappeared into his office, leaving me wondering if I just screwed up whatever comfortable dynamic we'd built, because the truth was Jessica wasn't entirely wrong. I was attracted to Dante, had been since the first time I saw him, if I was being honest, but acting on that attraction would complicate Everything our living situation, our friendship would complicate on that attraction, would complicate everything our living situation, our friendship, the careful balance we'd established thought better to keep things simple, professional, friendly, but boundaried, except boundaries became harder to maintain when 2 weeks later I came home from a particularly brutal shift to find Dante pacing the living room, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian that sounded angry. He hung up when he saw me. His expression darker than I'd ever seen it. Everything okay? Family business, nothing you need to worry about. But his tone suggested he was very much worried. Dante, you're clearly upset. If you want to talk about it, I don't, but thank you. He grabbed his keys. I need to go out. Don't wait up. He left. And I tried not to feel hurt by the abrupt dismissal. We were roommates, not partners. He didn't owe me explanations about his personal life. But when he still wasn't home at 2 a.m., I started worrying. And when he finally walked in at 3 a.m., I was awake on the couch, unable to sleep from concern. You waited up, he said, sounding surprised. I was worried you left upset. And then you were gone for hours, and I didn't know if something happened. I stopped when I saw his hands, bruised knuckles, dried blood on one sleeve. Dad, what happened? Are you hurt? I'm fine. Just a business situation that got physical. It's handled. You're bleeding. That's not fine. Let me look at your hands, Elena. I'm a nurse, literally trained for this. Sit down, and let me check if you need stitches or if anything's broken. He sat, and I examined his hands carefully. The knuckles were bruised and split, but not seriously damaged. No broken bones, nothing requiring stitches. I cleaned the wounds with antiseptic, applied bandages, working with professional efficiency while my mind raced with questions. What kind of business meeting ends with you bloodied and bruised? I asked as I wrapped his right hand. The kin. I don't want you involved in, Elena. My work, it's not always clean, not always legal. And the less you know about it, the safer you are. You in danger. Should I be worried about people coming here? You're safe. This apartment, this building, completely separate from business. I keep my personal life and work life completely separate. That's non-negotiable. But you're not safe. Whatever you were doing tonight put you in a situation where you got hurt. Dante, that's not normal business operations. That's my world, and it's not something you need to worry about. I appreciate your concern, but I can handle my own problems. He stood clearly, ending the conversation. Thank you for patching me up. I'm going to shower and sleep. You should too. After he left, I sat on the couch processing what had happened. The blood, the bruises, the angry phone call, the admission that his work wasn't always legal at all pointed to something I'd been trying not to see. Dante wasn't just a businessman with security. He was involved in something dangerous, possibly criminal. I should have been terrified, should have started looking for a new apartment immediately, but instead I just felt worried about him, about whatever situation had put him in danger, about whether he'd be safe the next time business got physical. But things between us were good, better than good, and 6 months into our relationship, I'd adapted to being the girlfriend of a mafia boss in ways I never imagined possible. I learned to read Dante's moods, to know when work stress was dangerous versus just frustrating. I learned which questions to ask and which to leave alone. And I learned that loving someone in his world meant accepting that some nights he'd come home late, bloodied, and unable to talk about what happened. You're handling this better than I expected, Dante said. One evening, we were cooking dinner together, one of our favorite routines, working side by side, in comfortable synchronization. Most people couldn't adapt to my life the way you have. Most people probably have more sense than to try. But I'm stubborn, and I love you, so here we are. It was the first time I'd said it directly. We danced around the words for months, showing it through actions, but never quite saying it out loud. Dante stopped chopping vegetables, turned to face me, say that again. I'm stubborn. The other part, one, love you have for a while now, probably since before the break, and just took me time to admit it. He crossed the kitchen, pulled me into his arms. I love you too. I have loved you since you yelled at me in the hallway about stealing your apartment. You were so furious, so passionate about standing your ground. I was captivated. You loved me while I was yelling at you. That's twisted. That's accurate. I like your fire, your strength. You don't back down, even when you're scared. That's rare in my world. We kissed, and dinner was forgotten for a while as we got lost in each other. Later, wrapped up together on the couch, Dante brought up something he'd clearly been thinking about. I want you to meet my family officially, not as my roommate or friend, but as my partner, the woman I'm planning a future with. That sounds serious and slightly terrifying. It is both those things. My family is complicated, traditional, in some ways very modern, in others they'll have opinions about you, about us, but I need them to know you're important to me, that you're under family protection, not just my personal protection. What's the difference? Personal protection means I'm responsible for keeping you safe. Family protection means the entire organization is responsible. Anyone who threatens you threatens all of us. It's a much stronger deterrent. So meeting your family is basically a business decision. It's a declaration that you're mine permanently, and harming you means war. But it's also personal. I want them to know the woman who's made me happier than I've been in years. The family dinner was scheduled for 2 weeks late. Are giving me time to be appropriately nervous. Dante coached me on family dynamics, who to defer to, which relatives were friendly versus suspicious of outsiders. Your mother, what's she like? Protective, traditional. She judged you on whether you're good enough for her son, whether you understand our world, whether you'll fit into the family. Just be yourself. Your strength and authenticity will win her over. You have a lot of faith in my ability to charm a mafia matriarch. I have faith in you, period. The dinner was held at his uncle's estate, a massive property in upstate New York that screamed old money and careful security. There were at least 30 people. PR is sent, all of them clearly family, all of them assessing me with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Dante's mother, Isabella, was an elegant woman in her 60s who studied me with sharp eyes that missed nothing. So you're the nurse who's captured my son's attention? He's talked about you extensively, though he failed to mention how young you are. I'm 29, Mrs. Romano. Young, but not that young. Please call me Isabella, and forgive my bluntness. In our family, we value directness. Tell me, how did you react when you learned what Dante does for a living? Honestly, I was shocked, scared, seriously considered moving out immediately, but I'd already fallen for him by then, so I decided the relationship was worth navigating the complications, even though his work puts you in danger, even though I'd rather face occasional danger with him than be completely safe without him. Isabella smiled, something warming in her expression. Good answer. Naive, perhaps, but heartfelt. My son deserves someone who chooses him consciously, knowing all the risks. You seem to have done. That dinner was an elaborate affair with multiple courses and wine flowing freely. I sat beside Dante, his hand frequently finding mine under the table, a silent reassurance that I was doing fine, that he was there. His uncle Salvatore was the head of the family. He studied me throughout dinner, asking pointed questions about my background, my family, my thoughts on loyalty and discretion. Dante tells me you were held at gunpoint by the Russo family 6 months ago. That must have been traumatic. It was terrifying, but Luca got there in time, and the situation was handled. I'm grateful for the protection. Your family provides protection, comes with expectations, loyalty, discretion, understanding. That family business stays within the family. Can you commit to that? I can. I love Dante, which means I'm committed to protecting what he's built with his family, understanding that what happens here stays here. You're asking me to be complicit in criminal activities. I'm asking you to be loyal to the people who will die to protect you. There's a difference. When you accept family protection, when you become part of this world, you accept that some things are more important than abstract moral principles. Family, loyalty, survival, these come first. Can you accept that? I can. Salvatore nodded approval, evident in his expression. Welcome to the family, Elena. You're under our protection now officially. That means something in our world, something powerful. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions, conversations, and careful assessments. I held my own, answered case tie-ins honestly when I could, and deflected politely when I couldn't. By the end of the night, I felt exhausted, but oddly triumphant, like I'd passed some kind of test I hadn't fully understood. I was taking. You did well, Dante said, as we drove back to the city. Better than well. My mother loves you. My uncle respects you. That's not easy to achieve, especially not in one evening. Your family is intimidating, but kind. I can see where you get your protective instincts. They're good people in a complicated world. Exactly. And now you're part of that world, part of that family officially. It felt real than the weight of what I'd chosen, the life I'd committed to. And surprisingly, instead of feeling trapped or scared, I felt liberated, like I'd finally found where I belonged. The months that followed were an adjustment period, learning to navigate family dynamics, understanding the unspoken rules of Dante's world, figuring out how to balance my career with the requirements of being a mafia boss's girlfriend. It wasn't always easy. There were late-night calls that pulled Dante away from dinners, family obligations that took precedence over my work schedule, security concerns that meant I couldn't always go where I wanted when I wanted. But there were also benefits beyond just the obvious ones, like living in luxury and having protection. I'd gained a family, something I'd never really had growing up with a single mother who worked constantly and no extended relatives nearby. Dante's family embraced me in a way that was overwhelming and wonderful. I had people who cared about my safety, my happiness, my future, people who showed up for birthdays and holidays and important moments. Isabella became a surrogate mother figure, checking in on me, offering advice, both personal and professional. Salvatore treated me like a daughter, asking about my work, my goals, my thoughts on everything from politics to family dynamics. Even Luca, who'd been professional and distant initially, warmed up once he realized I wasn't going anywhere. He started treating me like a little sister, bringing me coffee during long security briefings, teasing me about my work schedules, and offering unsolicited advice about dealing with Dante's moods. The family protection wasn't just theoretical either. 6 months after the official dinner, there was another attempt by a rival family to use me as leverage against Dante. They tried to grab me outside the hospital after a late shift, but Dante's people were ready. The threat was neutralized before I even knew it was happening. The would-be kidnappers simply disappeared, and I only found out about the atom point when Dante told me later that night they tried to take me. I said, not really asking a question, more processing the information. They tried. Luca's team prevented it. The people responsible have been dealt with permanently. Are you okay with that, Elena? Are you okay with knowing that people died tonight because they threatened you? I should have been horrified by the casual mention of murder, but instead I felt relieved, grateful that the threat was gone, that Dante's world had protected me as promised. Yes, I'm okay with it. They would have hurt me to hurt you. I can't be sorry that they're gone, instead that I'm safe because of your family's actions, though. That make me a terrible person. It makes you someone who understands the realities of this world, someone who prioritizes survival over abstract morality. You're learning to think like family, and that's exactly what you need to do to survive in my world. A year after I'd been officially welcomed into Dante's family, we were planning our wedding. It wasn't going to be a small affair. When you marry into a crime family, the wedding becomes a political and social event, a statement to other families about alliances and power structures. But it was also going to be a celebration of something real, the love Dante and I had built from the strangest possible beginning. Planning a mafia wedding was unlike anything I'd experienced before. There were guest lists that had to be approved by Salvatore, security concerns that affected everything from venue selection to catering choices, protocols for seating arrangements that had nothing to do with whether people liked each other, and everything to do with maintaining respect and avoiding insults that could trigger conflicts. But there were also beautiful traditions, elaborate ceremonies that had been passed down through generations of Dante's family, ways of celebrating love and commitment that felt both ancient and deeply personal. Isabella helped me navigate the complex requirements while also ensuring the day would be everything I wanted it to be. This is your wedding, she told me during one of our planning sessions, not just a family obligation. If there's something important to you, something that will make the day special, we'll find a way to make it happen. Tradition is important, but so is your happiness. The wedding itself was everything I could have hoped for and more, held at Salvatore's estate with 200 guests, elaborate flowers, traditional Italian customs mixed with personal touches that reflected Dante and my relationship. When Dante saw me walking down the aisle, his expression was everything love, pride, possessiveness, and something that looked like amazement, as if he couldn't quite believe I was choosing him. The reception was a celebration that lasted until dawn. Elaborate food, flowing wine, speeches that ranged from heartfelt to hilarious dancing that included both traditional Italian folk dances and modern music that had everyone from teenagers to grandparents on the dance floor. It felt like a fairy tale, but one grounded in reality, in the knowledge that this wasn't just a party but a commitment to a life that would be complicated, dangerous, and absolutely worth it. Now 5 years married, I couldn't imagine any other life. And people asked me if I ever regretted my choices, regretted getting involved with Dante, staying in his world, accepting the dangers and complications that came with being married to a mafia boss. I always told them the truth. Regret implies wishing you'd made different choices. I've never wished that our life isn't conventional or safe, but it's ours, it's real, it's built on love and respect and partnership, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. The apartment where we first met as antagonistic neighbors is now our home, expanded, renovated, filled with memories of the life we've built together. We have photos from our wedding, family dinners, holiday seal. Bratayan's evidence of a love story that started with the strangest circumstances and became everything I never knew I wanted. Dante is still involved in family business, still occasionally comes home with bruised knuckles or tension from dealing with territorial disputes, but he's also working to modernize operations to make them safer and more sustainable for the next generation. When we have children, and we will have children, eventually they'll inherit a legacy that's complicated, but also one that's evolving towards something better. And when I think about how this all started, when I remember coming home exhausted from a hospital shift to find Str. Men moving into my apartment, I can hardly believe it became everything. But sometimes the best love stories start with the strangest beginnings. Sometimes the person who ruins your life in the beginning ends up being the person who makes it complete. And sometimes home isn't a place you find, but a person you choose to build a life with against all odds. And despite all complications, we made it work, and 15 years after our wedding, Isabella was now a teenager who'd figured out her father's past and had questions. We'd known this conversation was coming, had prepared for it as best we could, but actually sitting down with our daughter T.O. explained that her father used to be involved in organized crime that was harder than anticipated. So you were in the mafia, Isabella said bluntly, like actually in it, not just adjacent or whatever. I was for most of my adult life before I met your mother. But when you were born, I'd already transitioned to legitimate business. You've never known that version of me, but it's still part of who you are. Your family is still connected to that world. Some parts of the family, yes. But Isabella, the first need you to understand I made choices to ensure you grow up safe, that you'd never be pulled into that life. Everything I've done since meeting your mother has been out building something better for our family. Mom knew about all of this when she married you. She found out early on, had the choice to leave. She chose to stay. Isabella turned to me. Why would you stay with someone involved in that? Because I loved him, because I saw who he was beyond his past, because he was actively working to change to be better, and because the life we built together, this family, has been worth every complication. But wasn't it scary knowing he could get hurt or arrested? Terrifying sometimes, but Isabella, every relationship involves risk. Your father's risks were just more obvious than most people's. I decided he was worth it, and 15 years later, I still think I made the right choice. Isabella processed this, clearly struggling with the revelation. I need time to think about this. It's a lot. Take all the time you need. And Isabella, you can ask us anything. We'll always be honest with you. After she left, Dante looked shaken. She hates me. She's going to hate me for my past. She doesn't hate you. She's processing. She'll work through it and come to the same conclusion I did, that your past doesn't define you. Your choices now, the father you are, the life you've built, that's what defines you. Isabella did work through it. Took a few weeks of distance and long conversations, but eventually she came around. I get it. You're not that person anymore. And honestly, the stories Grandma tells about you as a kid, you were kind of a troublemaker even before the crime family stuff. It's kind of on brand. 20 years after I knocked on apartment 4B's door to confront a stranger about stealing my apartment, Dante and I celebrated our anniversary. Isabella was away at college. Luca was in high school, and we had the apartment to ourselves for a rare, quiet evening. 20 years, Dante said, pouring wine. Since you showed up at my door looking furious and beautiful, demanding to know why I was moving into your apartment. I was so angry, thought you were the most arrogant person I'd ever met. I was arrogant still, and probably, but you've softened me, made me better. You've made me better too, braver and more willing to take risks, more understanding of moral complexity. We've been good for each other, the best for each other. He raised his glass to 20 more years and 20 after that, and as many years as we get, because I'm never letting you go. To us, to the life we've built, from the strangest beginning to finding love in the most unexpected place. When a stranger showed up at my door claiming he was my new roommate, we drank to that. To us, to 20 years of choosing each other through complications and joy and everything in bed. That night, wrapped up together in bed, I thought about how far we'd come, from antagonistic neighbors to reluctant roommates to friends to lovers to spouses to parents. Every step of the journey had been unexpected, often complicated, sometimes dangerous, but always worth it. I love you, I said into the darkness. Thank you for moving into my apartment and ruining my life in the best possible way. Dante pulled me closer. Thank you for staying, for choosing me despite every reason to run, for building this beautiful life with me. Wouldn't change a single thing, even the cramped studio apartment and the break-in and all the scary parts, because it all led here, and here is pretty perfect. Here is everything. We fell asleep like that, tangled together. 20 years of history between us, and hopefully many more years ahead. Two people who'd met as strangers, forcing an impossible roommate situation, and had turned it into the great love story of our lives. Found this in a box, I told Dante, showing him the photo. Remember When this was taken, Isabella took that at a family dinner, maybe 4 months. After I moved in, you were still pretending you were just tolerating me. As a roommate, I was not pretending, okay? I was totally pretending. I was already half in love with you and trying to convince myself it was just physical attraction. Meanwhile, I was fully in love with you and trying to respect boundaries by not acting on it. We were both idiots, happy idiots. Now, though, the happiest. Isabella ran and now 7 years old and full of questions. Mom, Dad, Luca won't share the remote. And I want to watch my show. Luca is 4 years 7. Be the bigger person and find a compromise. I said automatically. That's not fair. Life rarely is go negotiate with your brother. Use your words. After she left, Dante laughed. She definitely inherited our stubborn streaks. That kid is going to be trouble. She's your daughter, of course. She's going to be trouble, but she's also smart and kind and everything good about both of us. Just like her mother, it wasn't the story I'd expected when I'd rented apartment 4C, but it was better than anything I could have imagined, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Epilogue. 25 years later, Isabella brought her fiancé to meet us, nervous in a way that reminded me of myself 25 years ago when I'd met Dante's family. Mom, Dad, this is Alex. These are my parents. Alex shook our hands, clearly trying to hide nerves. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Romano. Isabella has told me so much about you. Call me Dante and ignore whatever Isabella told you. She's dramatic and probably made it sound more intimidating than we are. Dad was literally in the mafia. I think intimidating is understated, Isabella said dryly. Was past tense now. I'm just a businessman with a suspicious past, much less intimidating. Dante smiled. Alex, relax. We're not going to interrogate you much over dinner. Watching Isabella with her fiancé, I saw echoes of Dante and me 25 years ago. The way they looked at each other, the easy affection, the sense that they'd found something real and worth building on. They remind me of us, Dante said later after Isabella and Alex had left, young in love, ready to build a life together. Let's hope their beginning is less complicated than ours. No roommate drama or criminal revelations, but our complicated beginning made us stronger. All the reasons we shouldn't have worked, they made us fight for it, made us certain we were choosing each other for the right reasons. True, but still I hope they get a simpler start. 25 years since I confronted a stranger at my apartment door. 25 years of building a life that started from the strangest circumstances and became everything I'd never known I wanted. 25 years with the man who'd been my roommate, my friend, my partner, my husband, my everything, and I'd choose him again every single time, because sometimes the best love stories start with the strangest beginnings, and sometimes the person who ruins your life in the beginning ends up being the person who makes it complete. 3 years after Isabella graduated college, she called with news that changed everything. Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant. Alex and I are getting married next month. We wanted to do things in the right order this time. She sounded nervous but happy, and I could hear Alex in the background adding reassuring comments. Dante's face went through several emotions: surprise, concern, protective father mode, and finally joy. Our little girl is having a baby, he said after we hung up. She's not little anymore. She's 25, married to a good man, starting her own family. Time moves fast. Isn't it too fast sometimes? But I'm proud of who she's become, proud of the choices she's made. Alex turned out to be perfect for Isabella, patient, kind, with a steady job in finance and no criminal connections, which Dante appreciated more than he admitted. He'd worried about Isabella being attracted to danger the way I had been worried she'd choose someone from the family world out of familiarity or rebellion. Instead, she chose normal, and that felt like a victory. The pregnancy went smoothly, Isabella glowing with health and excitement as she planned her new life. Alex attentive and devoted, already reading parenting books and researching baby equipment and tea with the intensity he usually reserved for financial analysis. When their son was born, Marcus Romano Hayes, taking both family names, Dante cried, holding his grandson for the first time, his tough exterior completely dissolved by the tiny perfect human in his arms. He's beautiful, Dante whispered to Isabella, who was exhausted but radiant in her hospital bed. He has your eyes, stubborn chin, definitely a Romano. Isabella laughed. He's going to be trouble, just like his mom and grandfather. He's going to be perfect, Dante corrected. Absolutely perfect. Watching Dante with Marcus was a revelation. He was gentle, patient, completely devoted in a way that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with him all those years ago. The man who could be ruthless in business became putty in the hands of a baby who needed diaper changes and midnight feedings. Were grandparents Elena, He said one evening, as we watched Marcus sleep in his crib, we're responsible for helping raise another generation of the family that's terrifying and wonderful, and I have no idea how my parents did it. They did it with love and commitment and the belief that family comes first. I said the same way we did it, the same way Isabella and Alex are doing it, one day at a time with as much love and wisdom as we can manage. Marcus grew into a curious, energetic toddler who had Isabella's intelligence and Alex's steady temperament. He also had Dante's charm, which meant he got away with far more mischief than he should have. Spoiled grandson syndrome. Dante called it, completely unrepentant about his role in creating the problem. When Marcus turned 3, he started asking questions about why Grandpa Dante had so many friends who came to visit, why there were always men in suits around the house, why Uncle Luca carried a gun. Isabella and Alex decided it was time to have age-appropriate conversations about family history. They explained that Grandpa used to work in security, that some people needed protection, that family was important and loyalty mattered, but they also emphasized that Marcus's father worked in an office, that their family was different, that he would grow up with choices his grandfather hadn't had. The Romano family business had indeed evolved significantly under Dante's leadership. What had been primarily protection and territory management had become legitimate security, consulting, import-export operations, and real estate development. There were still connections to the old world, still situations that required careful handling, but the violent aspects had been minimized, isolated, relegated to extreme circumstances rather than daily operations. Dante was proud of this evolution, proud that he could offer future generations options beyond the traditional path. Salvatore had stepped back, gradually handing over operations with approval and respect for the changes Dante had implemented. You've done something remarkable, Salvatore told him at a family dinner celebrating Marcus's 4th birthday. You've kept the family strong while making it legitimate. That's not easy to achieve. By the time Marcus turned 5, Dante had been officially retired from active operations for 2 years, focusing instead on mentoring younger family members in legitimate business practices and maintaining relationships with allied families. The Romano name still carried weight in certain circles, but it was weight built on respect and business acumen rather than fear and violence. This is what I wanted for you, Dante told Isabella during one of our weekly family dinners. A legacy. You can be proud of a name that opens doors instead of creating problems, options for your children that don't involve looking over your shoulder. Isabella's 2nd pregnancy was announced when Marcus was 6, this time a daughter they would name Sophia after Dante's mother, who had passed away peacefully 2 years earlier. Isabella had become a successful architect, balancing motherhood with a demanding career that she loved. Alex had been promoted to senior partner at his firm. Their life together was everything I'd hoped for my daughter when she was young, stable, loving, built on mutual respect and shared values. Watching them together, watching their family grow, I felt a deep satisfaction knowing that the choices Dante and I had made all those years ago had created space for this kind of normal happiness. When Sophia was born, she looked exactly like Isabella had as a baby. Dark hair, serious eyes, a thoughtful expression that suggested she was already trying to figure out the world around her. Dante was completely smitten again, but this time he also seemed more aware of the responsibility of being a grandfather to a granddaughter in a world where women in the family business had historically been protected rather than empowered. She's going to be fierce, he predicted, watching 3-month-old Sophia grab his finger with surprising strength. She's going to change things, just wait and see. The years passed in a blur of family gatherings, birthday parties, school plays, and holiday celebrations. Marcus started playing soccer and showed natural leadership abilities, organizing his teammates and strategizing plays with intensity that reminded me of Dante planning business operations. Sophia grew into a determined little girl who questioned everything and accepted nothing at face value, much like her grandmother Isabella had at that age. Both children adored their grandfather, and he adored them, but he was also careful to ensure they understood the importance of education choices and building their own identities beyond the family name. When Marcus turned 10, he asked direct questions about the family business that couldn't be deflected with vague references to security and protection. Isabella and Alex decided it was time for honesty. They explained that their grandfather had once been involved in organized crime, that some family members still were, that this was part of their history, but not their destiny, that they had choices and options their grandfather had fought to preserve. They also explained why discretion mattered, why some things stayed within the family and why loyalty and respect were values that transcended business decisions. Marcus absorbed this information with remarkable maturity, asking thoughtful questions about right and wrong about family loyalty versus personal ethics about how good people could make questionable choices in difficult circumstances. His questions were so insightful that Dante started including him in family discussions. Inappropriate, treating his perspectives with respect and seriousness that honored his growing understanding of complex moral issues. You're going to be a remarkable man, Marcus, Dante told him after one particularly deep conversation about justice and family responsibility. You ask the right questions, and you think before you speak. Those are rare qualities. Sophia, at 8, was more interested in how things worked than in moral complexities. She wanted to understand family business structures, legal versus illegal operations, why some family members lived differently than others. Her questions were practical, analytical, focused on systems and processes rather than emotions and relationships. She's going to be brilliant, Isabella said, watching Sophia organize her toys with the efficiency of a logistics expert. Probably smarter than all of us combined, definitely more organized than her grandfather ever was. The family business continued to evolve, becoming more corporate, more legitimate, but never losing the tight bonds of loyalty and mutual protection that had defined it for generations. Younger members learned business skills alongside family values, understanding that success meant lifting up the entire organization, not just individual advancement. The Romano name opened doors in legitimate business. Circles, carried weight in political and social situations, commanded respect in ways that had nothing to do with intimidation or fear. When Marcus graduated high school at 17, with early admission to several prestigious universities, including Harvard and Yale, Dante felt a pride that was different from any business success he'd ever achieved. This was legacy in its purest form, the next generation, not just surviving, but thriving, not just continuing family traditions, but transforming them into something better. He's going to study international business and political science, Marcus announced at his graduation party. Wants to understand how legitimate power structures work, how to influence policy and create change through proper channels. That's exactly what this family needs, Dante said, someone who understands both worlds, but chooses the better path. Sophia, at 15, had already decided she wanted to study engineering, specifically focusing on security technology and systems analysis. She was fascinated by the intersection of traditional protection methods and modern technological solutions. Her science fair projects invariably involved surveillance equipment, communication systems, or defensive mechanisms that impressed her teachers and worried her parents in equal measure. She's defining Telia Romano. Isabella laughed watching Sophia explain her latest project involving motion sensors and alert systems, but she's channeling it into something completely legal and incredibly useful. As our grandchildren grew into remarkable young adults, I reflected often on the journey that had brought us to this point, from that first angry confrontation in the hallway outside my apartment to this beautiful, complex family we'd built together. Dante and I had created something that honored his family's legacy while transcending its limitations. We'd given our daughter and grandchildren choices, options, paths forward that combined the best of family loyalty with the freedom to build their own lives according to their own values, and that I thought was the greatest success any of us could have asked for. 27 years after I first knocked on apartment 4B's door, I still lived in the same building, though our space had expanded to encompass the entire floor, creating room for family gatherings, visiting grandchildren, and the quiet domesticity that had become the foundation of our life together. The apartment where it all began was now Dante's office, filled with family photos, business awards, and mementos from a life well lived, but also with planning documents for Marcus's college graduation, Ophia's engineering scholarship applications, and Isabella's latest architectural projects, evidence that our legacy was about much more than the past. It was about the future we'd made possible. The love story that had started with the strangest circumstances had become the foundation for something larger, a family that honored tradition while embracing change, that valued loyalty while promoting individual growth, that understood the importance of protection while choosing peace whenever possible. And when people asked me now if I regretted any of it, regretted the choices that led me from a simple nurse living alone to the matriarch of a complex ended family with a complicated history, I always gave them the same answer: regret. implies wishing you'd chosen differently. I Never Have Our Story began with a stranger taking my apartment and became everything I never knew I wanted, but exactly what I needed. And sometimes that's how the best love stories work. They start with disaster and end with everything. Subscribe and explore our other videos that remind you why love is worth fighting for.